Okay, good evening. Thank you everybody for joining. We had some technical difficulties, so if the sound cuts out, please put it in the comments so I know if there's any issues. Okay, let's get into it over here tonight. So, this week's Parsha, in addition to, there we go again, facing the camera the wrong way. Okay, in this week's Parsha, in addition to the regular Parsha, we also read Parshas HaChodesh, one of the four Parshios I think we discussed in the past. There are four Parshas that we read before Pesach and before Purim and before Pesach. This is the fourth Parsha. It's called Parshas HaChodesh, and it's the Parsha that begins with the that tells us about the mitzvah to make a month. The Jewish people are commanded to look at Moses commanded specifically to seek out the new moon, and once we have the new moon, that's when we have a new month, and that is the first month is the month of Nisan, the month of Passover, because if the Jewish people don't know when the new month is, we don't know when the Passover is, and then the Jewish people don't know when to prepare to leave our rabbi says the Jewish people did not seek to circumcise in Egypt. In fact, they all but abolished circumcision in Egypt, except for the tribe of Levi. As the verse states, of Levi, he said, your wholeheartedness and your lights. Why? Is because you observed your word and kept your covenant. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 33. In Egypt, God sought to redeem the Jewish people. They had no merit. What did God do? He called Moses and said, go and circumcise them. Some say it was Joshua who was there and circumcised them. So it continues, a rabbi say, the blood of the Pesach sacrifice and the blood of circumcision mixed, and God would pass and take each of them, kiss him and bless him, as it says, I passed over you and you saw you wallowing in your bloods. And I said to you, in your blood, by your blood you shall live, and I said to you, by your blood you shall live. Okay? So, that is, again, we quote this in the Seder every year, so we see that this was specifically connected to the fact that the Jewish people were not acting the way that they should have. They were steeped in idolatry. They were not practicing circumcision, and therefore they needed these two mitzvahs of circumcision and of the Passover offering in order to be meritorious for to merit the redemption, the Exodus. So if you look at this idea, the question is, why did they need two mitzvahs? If you say that they were bare of any mitzvahs, give them one mitzvah. Give them the mitzvah of sacrifice. Give them the mitzvah of circumcision. Give them the mitzvah of making a new month. Why specifically did they need these two mitzvahs? And if we look deeper a little bit, this idea of these two mitzvahs represented the two categories of mitzvahs that we have. We have the positive commandments and we have negative commandments. Maybe we'll talk about another time, but also the 10 commandments, right, are split into do's and don'ts. So therefore, the Jewish people needed to have, since they were deficient in both positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs, meaning things that we don't do, therefore they needed to have both. So the mitzvah of circumcision was the positive commandment, and the mitzvah that would give them the ability to get rid of the negativity, as it would say in Hebrew, sur me'rav aseh tov, go away from bad and go towards good. So what was the go away from bad mitzvah? That was the Passover sacrifice. So the question is, why would the Passover sacrifice be a mitzvah that would kind of remove us from the Jewish people from negativity? Seemingly, the Passover sacrifice is a positive commandment, not a negative commandment, right? You're supposed to do something active. So Rashi explains, because, as we said, Rashi explains that the reason is because they were steeped in idolatry. They were totally entrenched in idolatry. So they took the Egyptian god, the Egyptian deity, and which was a lamb, a sheep, and by taking that lamb and bringing it to their house and slaughtering it, this kind of got them away. It allowed them to remove themselves from the Egyptian culture of idolatry. In fact, in the Medrash, Moses has this conversation with God, and after God tells Moses that they should take a lamb, Moses says, "Master of the universe, how can I do so? Do you not know that lambs are the gods of Egypt? As it says, behold, we were to sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes. Would they not stone us?" Right. So the Jewish people are saying to God, and Moses is saying to God, "How could we do this? We're not gonna live to tell the tale if we try to slaughter the idolatry of Egypt." God says to him, replies to Moses, "By your life, Israel, we will not depart from here until they slaughter the god of Egypt before their eyes, and I will thereby inform them that their gods are nothing." So we see here that actually it was part of the plan, that God says, no, this is what's going to happen. And so it was, right? They slaughtered them, and there was nothing that the Egyptians could do. So now we can also understand a little bit more why they had to take this sheep in early, as Rashi quotes Rabbi Matya ben Charash, that they had to bring it in early. That they had to kind of live for 4 days. They had to live with the sheep and really understand what they were going to do. And we see this idea brought down in Genesis, okay? And Rashi also, in the book of Genesis, there's a very similar kind of a timeline. That it says when Abraham is going to the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, God comes to Abraham and says, "Take your only son, your precious son from Sarah, and bring him as a sacrifice." Right? It's the greatest challenge that Abraham has to face, that God is saying that the son that he had prayed for, that God had promised him, that he has to slaughter him on or bind him as to bring as an offering. So it says that Abraham was traveling for 3 days. As it says in Genesis chapter 22, on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and he saw the place from afar. He saw the place where the sacrifice was going to take place. So Rashi comments over there, why did God delay showing it to Abraham immediately? Right? In other words, God could have said, okay, this is the place where we're going. Just get up and go. Why did it take him 3 days before God showed him where to go? So that the people should not say that he confused Abraham and confounded him suddenly and deranged his mind. And if he had time to think about it, he would have not done it. Okay? And Rashi says, what do you mean he saw the place? He saw a cloud that was hovering over this mountain, and that's how he knew where it was. So we see here that Rashi says the idea of 3 days, and this is in other commentaries, the Gur Aryeh also says if he had time to think it over, therefore he delayed until the third day. As we find regarding prayer, one's mind is not settled until the third day after arriving home from a voyage. So again, this idea, we see that specifically 3 days of traveling, or 3 days in general, kind of shows on someone's calmness of mind, the calm state of mind, a secure state of mind. So if God would have said, Abraham, get up in the morning and go slaughter your son, people would say Abraham was just confused, he was befuddled, right? People do all kinds of crazy things in the moment that they don't fully grasp what's going on. So we see from here that no, Abraham was fully conscious. He took 3 days, he was traveling, he never changed his mind. He was going to follow God's directive the entire time. And the same thing here with the Jewish people. The Jewish people took for 3 days, or 4 days, which has 3 days, is within 4 days, that they took these days. They had enough time to they were making a conscious decision. They were leaving idolatry. They were leaving the culture and the idolatry of the Egyptians, and they were going to become the Jewish nation by bringing this with a full, clear, and conscious mind. So now we're going to the last part we're going to discuss tonight. This very interesting story about the person that Rashi quotes this, who this teaching is said in the name of, Rabbi Matya ben Charash. Now Rashi does not always quote who he is saying this teaching in the name of. Sometimes he does, and there's usually a reason why. Many times he just says our sages say, or he just quotes something without even referencing where he got it from. So every time he says who the person is, there must be a reason. And not only that, he doesn't just say that Rabbi Matya ben Charash said. He says in the Hebrew, Hayo Rabbi Matya ben Charash Omer. That Rabbi Matya ben Charash used to say, like this was a common refrain that he would say. So who was Rabbi Matya ben Charash? He was a sage who lived in the time of the 2nd century. This is post the he lived post the destruction of the temple in the year 70 in the Common Era, and post, or probably as well, the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which was ended in, I believe, the year 135. So he lived around that time. His contemporaries were Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Yeshaya. His teachers were Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. These are great sages of the Mishnah. And what happened was, after the Bar Kokhba rebellion, he and other sages, that including Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Matya ben Charash that we mentioned, Rabbi Chanina ben Achi, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yonatan, were planning on leaving Israel. And eventually, they began to cry and they ripped their clothing after the devastation they had seen in the land of Israel, and they were forced to leave Israel. They were devastated, and eventually they returned to the land of Israel. However, later Rabbi Matya ben Charash, who is the protagonist of our discussion tonight, moved to Rome, which is very far away from the land of Israel, and he established a yeshiva there, which became one of the largest and most prestigious of its day. Now, what's the $1 million question? If you were to get a committee together and do a study and a research about where's the best place to open a yeshiva, in those times it would not have been Rome. Rome is the opposite of the land of Israel. It's the epitome of the enemy. In fact, other rabbis of the day opened yeshivas in Bnei Brak,
in maybe not Jerusalem itself, but Yavne, Babylon even, but nobody opened the yeshiva in Rome except Rabbi Mati ben Charash. So why did he open a yeshiva in Rome? And in this teaching that was his kind of his motto, that he used to say that the Jewish people had to take themselves away from the idolatrous nature that they were in, and to bring this sheep into their house and to change who they were. This was the kind of his motto that he used to comfort his students in Rome with. That he was saying to his students in Rome that the Jews in Rome are, yes, they are not the best Jews who are going to be the ones who are going to be the most educated and the most sophisticated and the most religious, etc. But these are the ones that are naked and bare. These are the Jewish people who have no other opportunity. And he specifically went to Rome and he said that you are the ones who are just like in the times of Egypt, where the Jewish people were naked and bare of mitzvahs. So too, you guys, that's your status. You don't have the same opportunities that the students in the land of Israel have. However, he wanted to transform them by putting them in a yeshiva atmosphere, in a place where they were, instead of being steeped in idolatry in the example of Egypt, or being steeped in Roman culture, he was going to now steep them in yeshiva culture and the study of Torah, and change them into yeshiva students, which he was very successful in doing. And this is what's going to bring the redemption. This is what's going to bring Mashiach, just like it brought upon the redemption and the exodus from Egypt. And this is something that's very practical. That we now live close to 2,000 years of exile. And the question is, why are we in exile for so long? What are we doing here? And the answer is that we have to realize that every single one of us, we have to make sure that we are not leaving this exile naked and bare of mitzvahs. We are not going to leave this exile in a state of well, we have no idea what's happening, kind of like in a state of craziness where we're not conscious. We're going to take this and find every single Jew that we know, and whether it's ourselves in every situation that we encounter, every single Jew that we meet, we have to find them and we have to make sure that they have a mitzvah. And this is really the power this is the power of a mitzvah. The power of a mitzvah is that one mitzvah or two mitzvahs could change an entire nation and make them a nation of the people who don't know, don't have the opportunities, but we could make them into a nation full of Torah and full of mitzvahs. And that is what's going to lead to, just like in those times, so too in our times, we will have the redemption should be speedily in our days. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we will, God willing, see you next week.